You know, I used to be lost, man. And I don't mean confused, I mean lost. You all saw the headlines, the belts, the chaos, the flash. You saw the monster they built, the guy who could end a fight in seconds. But nobody saw what happened when the lights went off. Nobody saw the emptiness that waited for me in the dark. I had everything they said would make me happy: money, fame, fear, power. But inside, I was bleeding in silence. I could knock out any man in the ring, but I couldn't win against the one inside my head. That fight, that was the one I was losing every single day. There's this quiet that comes after the roar of the crowd. When the gloves come off and the cameras disappear, you're left staring at yourself. And that's the scariest opponent you'll ever meet. I looked at that reflection one night and didn't recognize who I'd become. The rage, the ego, the loneliness, they all had my face. People called me the baddest man alive, but I didn't even feel alive. I was fighting ghosts, chasing peace in all the wrong places, drowning in applause that never reached my heart. And then something happened. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just a moment, a stillness, like the world took a breath and held it. That's when Islam found me, not when I was rich, not when I was on top. It found me when I was broken, when I had nowhere left to hide from myself. It wasn't a preacher or a headline that brought it. It was something deeper, like God had been watching the whole time, waiting for me to finally fall quiet enough to hear him. I didn't even realize it at first, but that was the beginning of everything. The moment I stopped running and started listening. The moment the noise faded and peace began to whisper back. You know, before I ever found peace, I lived in chaos. Pure, uncontrollable chaos. The kind that eats you alive while you're smiling for the cameras. People think being on top of the world feels like heaven, but for me it was hell with bright lights. I was young, rich, famous, and completely out of control. Every day was noise, parties, people, pressure. I thought I was untouchable, but deep down, I was crumbling. The more the world cheered for me, the louder the silence in my head became. I'd walk into a room full of people, laughter bouncing off the walls, and still feel like I didn't belong anywhere. Everyone wanted a piece of Mike Tyson, the fighter, the legend, the ticket to fame. But nobody wanted Mike, the man. The scared kid from Brooklyn who just wanted someone to tell him he was enough. I was surrounded by people, but I never felt more alone. You start to lose trust in others and yourself. You start to build walls made of anger because it's easier to be feared than to be hurt. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I'd sit there staring at the ceiling, asking myself why I felt so empty when I had everything. I'd replay every mistake, every betrayal, every punch I threw outside the ring, not at opponents, but at my own life. Drugs, women, fame, they were all distractions, man. None of them filled that hole inside. I was chasing peace like it was another title to win. But the truth is, peace can't be fought for. It has to be surrendered to. And ego was my biggest enemy. It told me I didn't need help. It told me I was a god. But gods don't cry themselves to sleep. I remember looking at my reflection and not recognizing the person staring back. My eyes were hard, my soul tired. You can't hide from that mirror. You can't lie to it. So yeah, I was living fast, breaking everything, including myself. From the outside, it looked like I was unstoppable. But inside, I was just a man drowning in his own storm, waiting for something, anything, to save him from himself. There comes a moment in every man's life when the mask slips, when all the noise, the fame, the pride, finally collapses under its own weight. For me, that moment didn't happen in a ring. It didn't happen in front of millions. It happened alone, in silence. One night, I remember sitting there, surrounded by everything the world says you should want. Cars, gold, people who called me champ. But none of it meant a thing. My heart was heavy, my mind racing, and my soul empty. That's when I realized I was done. Not in the sense of giving up, but like something inside me had finally burned out. I used to think I was strong because I could take a punch, but real strength, that's when you admit you're broken. I had money, power, control, but I couldn't control myself.
I was losing to my anger, to temptation, to the voice that kept saying, "You're nothing without this chaos." That voice was killing me slowly, and I didn't even fight back. I was too tired. I tried everything. Therapy, distractions, running from myself, but you can't outrun your own shadow.
And you know what? When you finally surrender, when you fall to your knees, not out of weakness, but out of desperation, that's when God starts to lift you up. I just didn't know yet that Islam would be the hand reaching down to do it. There's a kind of silence that doesn't scare you, it humbles you. After all the noise, all the headlines, all the fights and chaos, I remember waking up one morning and realizing I didn't want to fight anymore. Not the world, not people, not myself. My whole life had been built on power, domination, intimidation, survival. But now, sitting in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: surrender. Not the kind that comes from defeat, but the kind that comes from truth. I remember looking in the mirror, seeing my reflection, and not recognizing the man staring back. I didn't see the champion. I saw a man who'd been running from himself. I saw the fear in my own eyes, fear of being nothing without the world's applause. But that morning, something inside me whispered, "You don't need to be who they think you are anymore." It was quiet, still, and it broke me all over again, but this time in a good way. Someone once told me that when God wants to reach you, he doesn't shout. He strips away the noise until you have no choice but to listen. That's exactly what he did to me. Piece by piece, he took away everything I thought defined me: the spotlight, the ego, the illusion of control, and what was left wasn't destruction, it was space, space for something real. It was during that time I started reading about Islam, not for show, not because someone told me to, but because I was searching. And for the first time, what I read didn't feel like words on a page. It felt like a mirror reflecting back the truth I'd ignored all my life. Submission, not to people, not to power, but to the Creator. That word submission hit me hard because my whole life had been rebellion. I never bowed to anyone, but now I realized maybe bowing wasn't weakness, maybe it was freedom. When I said my first prayer, I didn't even know if I was doing it right, but I knew I meant it, and that's all that mattered. For the first time, I felt peace that didn't depend on the world. No cameras, no audience, just me and God. And in that moment, I understood what real strength is. It's not the power to destroy, it's the courage to surrender. You know, people think when you find faith, everything suddenly gets easy, but it ain't like that. Faith didn't erase my pain, it just gave it purpose. Before Islam, I was chasing everything outside me, trying to fill a hole that only God could fill. After I became Muslim, that chase stopped, not because the world changed, but because I did. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't fighting to be loved or feared. I was learning how to be still. When I started praying regularly, I began to see the world differently. The noise, the chaos, the people who used to trigger me, it all started to fade into the background. Every time I bowed my head, it felt like I was laying down a piece of my past. The anger, the ego, the pain. I realized Islam wasn't about turning me into someone else. It was about bringing me back to who I was always meant to be. And I'll be honest with you, I cried a lot in those early days, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. I used to think tears were weakness, but in those moments they felt like cleansing, like I was washing away years of darkness that had built up around my soul. I remember one night after prayer, I just sat there on the floor whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Because the truth is, I had given up on myself a long time ago. Islam taught me discipline, not the kind I had in the ring, but the kind that keeps your soul steady when your emotions go to war. It taught me patience, humility, mercy, all the things I used to think were soft. But that's the thing about real strength. It doesn't need to scream. It's quiet, controlled, and full of peace. Every day I started seeing the little signs, moments where God reminded me I'm still here, a stranger's kindness, a verse that hit deep, the sunrise after a long night, and I realized life was never about how hard I hit. It was about how deeply I could feel, how much love I could give, how much forgiveness I could carry. That was my rebirth.
understood that the greatest victory isn't over others, it's over yourself. You know, people think when you find faith, everything suddenly gets easy. But it ain't like that. Faith didn't erase my pain, it just gave it purpose. Before Islam, I was chasing everything outside me, trying to fill a hole that only God could fill. After I became Muslim, that chase stopped. Not because the world changed, but because I did. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't fighting to be loved or feared. I was learning how to be still.
Every day I started seeing the little signs, moments where God reminded me I'm still here. A stranger's kindness, a verse that hit deep, the sunrise after a long night, and I realized life was never about how hard I hit. It was about how deeply I could feel, how much love I could give, how much forgiveness I could carry. That was my rebirth, not a new Mike Tyson, a real one, the one who finally understood that the greatest victory isn't over others, it's over yourself. There's a part of my story most people don't see, the part before the faith, before the calm, the part where I was running from myself. I had everything this world tells you to chase, but I couldn't look in the mirror for too long. Every reflection felt like a lie I was trying too hard to sell. I'd smile for cameras, laugh in interviews, but behind closed doors it was just me and the noise of regret, the noise of choices I couldn't undo. I hurt people, I lost people, I made decisions out of anger, pride, fear, and every time I tried to bury that part of me, it just came back louder. You can't buy silence when your soul's screaming. I tried to drown it in success, in distractions, in anything that would keep me from hearing the truth, that I wasn't proud of the man I'd become. When Islam found me, it didn't erase my past. It forced me to face it, but not with shame, with hope. It taught me that no matter how dark your story gets, Allah's mercy is always greater, that every wound can become a door to light if you stop hiding it. I used to think forgiveness was something weak people needed. Now I know it's what strong people fight for, because it takes courage to forgive yourself and start again. I remember one night, I was sitting alone after Fajr prayer. The sky was still dark, just a hint of dawn breaking through. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking about who I used to be. I was thinking about who I still could become. That's what faith does. It doesn't erase your scars. It turns them into reminders of how far you've come. So yeah, I've done things I regret. I've walked paths I wish I hadn't. But if those paths led me to where I am now, to this peace, to this truth, then maybe they weren't mistakes. Maybe they were lessons. Maybe Allah was guiding me through the storm the whole time. Every time I bow my head in sujood, I think about the man I used to be, and I thank Allah I'm not him anymore, because I finally understand the past isn't something you escape from, it's something you rise from. And with every prayer, every tear, every step, I'm still rising. Camera lingers on his face. No spotlight, no roar of the crowd, just quiet. Mike Tyson looks straight ahead, his voice steady but soft, the kind of calm that only comes after years of storms. Islam didn't make me perfect, he says, a faint smile touching the corner of his lips. It made me real. There's no bravado left in him, no armor to hide behind, just truth. He pauses, eyes distant for a moment as if he's watching his own life unfold somewhere far away. You spend your whole life chasing something, money, power, respect. You think when you get it all, that's when you'll finally rest. He shakes his head slowly, but peace don't come from the world, man. It comes from Allah. It comes from letting go. His tone softens even more, turning into something almost like a prayer. If you're lost, man, just talk to God. You don't gotta be perfect, you just gotta be honest. Cry, shout, whisper. He's listening, always. The words hang in the air, heavy with sincerity, stripped of all performance. There's a deep stillness in him now, a man who has seen every extreme, glory and ruin, pride and repentance, and found balance somewhere in between. I used to be the baddest man on the planet. Chaos is gone. What remains is faith, redemption, and a man finally at peace with himself and his creator. The screen fades to black, but his last words stay with you, not as noise, but as a whisper from a soul that finally found its home.